Good evening, everybody. We're just about to start. Ms. Doan is running a few minutes late, and I want to make sure we respect everybody's time. We have a lot of recognitions to go through tonight, it looks like, and so just bear with us just a few more minutes while we have our superintendent get situated. Ms. Pangarelli stepped out for just a moment, and as I mentioned, Ms. Doan will be here shortly. Thank you again for coming. We're going to go ahead and start with a moment of silence and then a Pledge of Allegiance read by Miss Cassandra Orlando, 4th grade from Desert Palms.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Moving on to 3.1, address the agenda and consider adoption or recommendation changes. Board, at this moment, I would like to make a motion to table 8.9, the first reading of JFB open enrollment, and adopt the remaining agenda items as presented.
Just why? Why are we tabling it? It's not ready?
So I was going to do a motion and then discussion.
Is that what we're doing it now? Okay.
So as discussed with administration, there needs to be further review on 8.9.
Okay,
So.
then I'll second the table.
Any discussion? All right. Motion reads as presented. We'll do a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And one absent. So 4 yeses and 1 absent. Thank you very much for that. Proceed to 4.1, staff recognitions tonight. It will be led by Ms. Dunsey.
Good evening, President Seha Martinez, members of the board, and Mrs. Pallas Thompson. I believe we do have the smartest room this evening. We are very excited, and we are filled with families that are proud for a recognition that is well worth mentioning to you this evening. AZ Merit is Arizona's measurement of educational readiness to informed teaching. And as you know, this is a test that is given to students in grades 3 through high school, and it does test students in the areas of reading, writing, and math. I am pleased to share with you that Peoria Unified has an astounding 426 students from across our district who received the highest score possible in one of those areas. That is up from 363 last year. I'll agree that that is a remarkable number. Tonight, we are so thrilled to share that we have 20 extremely remarkable students here with us who have received the highest score possible on both the AZ Merit English Language Arts and the math portions of the AZ Merit test. We invited all 20 students here this evening. We know not every single one were able to join us because, as we know, those students have a lot of other commitments as well, but we have many of them and their families that are here tonight, and we are going to recognize them. So students, those of you that are here, when I do call your name, please stand and remain standing. We're going to have a portion a little bit later where you can come up front to get a picture. Starting with Joel Calhoun, a 6th grade student at Paseo Verde Elementary School. Lily Chavez, a 5th grade student at Park Ridge Elementary School. Joshua Healy, a 5th grade student at Sunset Heights Elementary School. George Heswani, 4th grade student from Copperwood Elementary School. Ruby Wen, 4th grade student at Paseo Verde Elementary School. Cedric Kyle Fidel, a 5th grade student also from Sunset Heights Elementary School. I'm not sure if she was able to join us, but Mackenzie Frey, she is from Oakwood Elementary School and is our only repeat perfect score from last year as well. Let's congratulate her regardless. Rachel Combe is a 7th grade student at Marshall Ranch Elementary School who is at an FBLA event tonight. Congratulations to her also. Sophia Mailman, 6th grade student from Copperwood Elementary School. I don't know if he was able to join us, but Matthew Mulligan, 7th grader from Park Ridge Elementary School. Daniel Nuazu, 8th grader from Oakwood Elementary School. And you all will remember our pledge student, Cassandra Orlando, 4th grader from Desert Palms Elementary. We also have Logan Pelkey, 6th grader from Copperwood Elementary School. Cameron Rudders, 5th grade student from Desert Harbor Elementary School. Amaya Rubalcaba, 5th grade student from Cheyenne Elementary School. Dylan Sheldall, 5th grade student from Apache Elementary School. I hope your hands aren't done yet. We have a few more. Trevor Smith, 5th grade student from Oakwood Elementary School. Logan Unthank, 5th grader from Copperwood Elementary School. Grant Valentine, who's a freshman at Sunrise Mountain High School.
Hey, Grant.
Michael Whalen, sophomore from Centennial High School. Congratulations to these 20 students who have achieved something so remarkable. We are so pleased that they were able to join us this evening. Students, we know that you have many, many family members here who have supported you here tonight. We'd like to also give you a round of applause for what you do to support your children. And last but certainly not least, we have a number of principals in the room and assistant principals who came here this evening in order to support their students as well. Thank you so much for coming. I saw many of you guys come in. Dale Schuff, Richard Troy, Dr. Sorensen, Heidi Stillman, Stacy Bagwell, Lisa Reese, Becky Slater. There's so many in the room, so thank you guys so much for coming in case I missed any. At this time, Superintendent Pallas Thompson, if you don't mind joining us in front of the dais, we have some certificates for you to give these students. So students, I'm going to go ahead and call your name for you to go up there. Now families, this is your opportunity to take their picture. So you're going to go ahead and pose with our superintendent for just a moment so your parents can snap a picture of you. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with Joel Calhoun. Make sure you pose for a picture. Oh, turn that around so they could see it. There you go. You can come up in front. Don't be shy. Come on up. This is his moment to shine, so go ahead and capture that moment. Thank you. How about Lily Chavez? Thank you. Joshua Healy. Great. George Heswani. He's coming. He's coming.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Ruby Wen? Thank you. Cedric Kyle Fidel. Thank you. I just want to double check Mackenzie Frey in case she was able to sneak in. No? Okay. Rachel, I don't believe was able to join us. Sophia Mailman? Thank you. Checking for the family of Matthew Mulligan. No Matthew. No Daniel Nwazu. Just checking. Cassandra Orlando, you're up. Thank you. Logan Pelkey. Cameron Rudders. Amaya Ruvalcaba. Dylan Sheldall. Trevor Smith. Logan Unthank. Grant Valentine.
Sir, I can't put my arms around you like that, but I can stand you. Really well done.
Michael Whalen. Now, just to put it in a context, last year, When we recognize students for receiving the highest score possible on both the English language arts and mathematics portions of the AZ Merit, we had 8 perfect scores in our district compared to the 20 that we had last year. So let's give everyone one final great big round of applause. Families, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
That was like 5 minutes ago. I can't remember. Wow. Clear.
I would have done without that. And your mom would have had to answer my phone the rest of the night. Okay.
Oh, yes. Sounds like we're about to continue, so we'll go ahead and start. I know they all stepped out, but I'll go ahead, and if any of the governing board members would like to address or make any comments, and then Ms. Pallas-Thompson will proceed with your recognitions. Mr. Sandoval, would you like to address any of what was presented?
Yeah, I think for me, it's congratulations to everybody who's now outside of the boardroom. But I mean, it's, you know, again, it's always inspiring, and it's always a proud moment to see the result, you know, of the commitment, you know, of our teachers and staff and PUSD, right? So it certainly, you know, makes you know, sit in this seat. You know, one that is rewarding without question.
Thank you. Ms. Stone.
Well, I have to say I wasn't really prepared for that large leap, but I was very excited to hear about it, and I think that it just goes to show that, you know, what dedicated people and students that really put themselves to the task can accomplish. So I'm very pleased and gratified, and congratulations to you all if you ever see this.
Ms. Pangarelli.
No, I just wanted to say congratulations, and I just wanted to get the number of students last year. It's 20 this year.
8 for perfect
8.
score.
Wow. Okay, that is quite a remarkable growth. So just congratulations for, yeah, if anybody's watching us.
Ms. Connect.
I think that's indicative of the fact that it was a brand new test. New questions asked in a different way on different curriculum, and so I think that kind of growth is expected as students get more familiar with the content and with the format of the test itself. So it's great, and I really appreciate putting that on the agenda, because I think sometimes we do a lot of things that are, you know, flashier, like our arts productions and our championships, and those are all wonderful things, and I think draw people to our school district. But at the end of the day, this is about academics, and so when we take the time to really shine the light on the achievements of our kids, I think that's really time well spent. So, good agenda item.
I would agree. The fact that there's so much growth happening from year to year, I look forward to seeing the continued growth and the support, not only from administrators, but their parents as well. And I saw other family members, grandparents all supporting. So it's definitely one community. It's great to see those children succeed. All right, now moving forward, Ms. Linda Pallas-Thompson, you mentioned you had some recognitions for us.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Sejas-Martinez. We have, first of all, exciting news out of Raymond S. Kellis. They were recently named the United Champion School by Special Olympics Arizona. This for their unified sports program. Very, very exciting. ESPN was at Kellis today. We'll be there again tomorrow doing a story on game changers in the Special Olympics. Some of our people were there, and it was pretty exciting today. They're going to be featured as part of the 50th anniversary special that will be aired during the Sports Center. It's pretty neat. And the other good news that we have is we got from the Phoenix Business Journal an article that lists the top Arizona high schools that send the most kids to either Harvard, Princeton, and MIT between 2015 and 17. We'll be seeing these names that we saw in a little while. The data comes courtesy of Polaris List, a website that gathered information on public and private high schools, and the article revealed that Peoria Unified has 4 schools on that list, including Centennial, Ironwood, Liberty, and Sunrise. Centennial sent 2 to Harvard, Ironwood 1 to Harvard, 1 to MIT, Liberty 1 to Harvard, and Sunrise Mountain 1 to Harvard and 1 to MIT. So pretty impressive for our students, and we're very, very excited to see that.
That is phenomenal. I get the
very,
goosebumps.
very exciting.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Moving forward to board recognitions, Ms. Stone.
I don't have anything.
Mr. Sandoval?
Yes, thank you. So, we realized I guess news that we certainly didn't wish for on Tuesday, but my recognition is really to everybody, all the community members, all the individuals from the district, and partners, et cetera, who put themselves out there to really show how important, and I'm going to use Ms. Pallas-Thompson, one of your quotes, how important this thing called education is, and public education, and what an impact and how important it is to our community, our city, state, and nation. The result, wasn't what quite frankly we needed, but I think the silver lining for me is, just the display of collaboration, the display of passion, from all the individuals that I just mentioned, just truly inspiring. I think PUSD is, a district that's been known for, again, its innovation and forward thinking, but also, failing forward and persevering and resilience. And I am certain that that same level of personality and character, will continue. We'll just, have to, see about, what we do about, going, out for this again. So, that's not a statement of us doing so, but, that is certainly, again, just congratulations and thank you to everybody and all the time that everybody put in an effort.
Thank you. Ms. Connect.
I have nothing this evening.
Ms. Pingerelli?
I just wanted to say thank you to Dr. Beltram. She had a great turnout. I think it was better than last year for the Career in College Readiness Day. Am I saying that right? Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was able to catch the tail end, but it was just a phenomenal outcome. So expect you to do even greater next year.
And thank you for that. I would like to first take a moment and agree that the community support for showing up to vote is definitely our civic engagement responsibility, and bringing their voices forward on how they proceed, how we should proceed, gives us direction. I want to take a special moment to acknowledge Dr. Michael Gard, Davida Salter, Corey Underhill, and Beverly Pangarelli for running for office for the governing board. It takes a lot of commitment, as we all know, and thank you for your time and dedication. And I would like to acknowledge and welcome our newest governing board-elect. We'll start in January, Corey Underhill. And then congratulations, Ms. Pangarelli, for being reelected. Just a friendly reminder, Monday is Veterans Day, and we have a lot of veterans that volunteer their time in our school district, and we are so grateful for their service. And if you see a veteran, please thank them. With that being said, no more board recognitions, and we'll move on to public comment. I do have one. Casey Franklin.
Good evening, President Ceja Martinez, Superintendent Pallas Thompson, and members of the governing board. I come to you tonight slightly more heavy-hearted than I was a few weeks ago when I last addressed you. Unfortunately, our bond measure was not successful in passing this week. We have, as of 5 p.m. this afternoon, obtained just over 27,000 votes, or 46% of the ballots cast. So unfortunately, that was not enough to successfully pass our bond, and the needs remain for our students, and the needs are great. We also have an override that is nearing an end within the next few years as well, and those needs will continue to press and weigh on the community and need to be addressed. I come to you tonight not with any explanation or information about where things went right or wrong, but simply to request that the governing board consider reconvening the Citizens Bond and Override Committee again as soon as possible so that we can address and consider the option of going out for a bond or override again next year. I believe this would provide the most benefit to the school district and provide us the best opportunity to succeed in obtaining additional funding for our district. Thank you for your time, thank you for your support, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Moving on to 6.1, consent agenda. Would anybody like to pull anything? Okay, I need a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Connect and a second by Mr. Sandoval to approve the consent agenda. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to 8.1, Superintendent Search. Dr. Carter Davidson.
Good evening, President Ceja Martinez, members of the board, Superintendent Pallas Thompson. Tonight I come to you to lead you in conversation, essentially, or allow for conversation, but ultimately to secure a vote on our plans for the superintendent search as we move into our future. Just a few slides as a reminder to our community that in February of 2018, we did select McPherson and Jacobson to support this process as we began last year. And as you see there, we also worked with a consultant to establish not only a strategy, but also to look at a timeline for the superintendency search that was to begin this November of 2018. And we have a little graphic for our community and for our board as well, just to remind our team of what that timeline looked like, that we would open the search here in November, we would close that in December. In January, we would begin the interview process with hopes that we would secure a candidate by March, and that essentially that candidate would start in July of this coming school year. As you look at that slide there and take a look at the strategic plan that we have created, I wanted just to remind our team here that we worked side by side with our consultant to gather the necessary feedback and looked at things that maybe we needed to improve upon. The feedback we received helped us build our strategic plan, one that we are now implementing fully, and we're very excited about that plan that guides us. There's factors to consider as we move into this conversation tonight. Some of the things that we need to consider in this critical decision are essentially addressing the concerns that came from that survey, things that talked about where is our curriculum, how are we doing with the implementation of our curriculum, do we need new curriculum? What is the climate and the culture like here in our school district? Do we have a strategic plan? Certainly, as we look at the decision tonight as well, our hope and desire is that we continue to push forward, gain momentum in those strategic areas and those initiatives that we're working on. And ultimately, as you consider the decision tonight, we do need to keep in mind, of course, the results that many of you just spoke about from our most recent election. As I stand for any questions and comments, you may be wondering, well, where do we go from here? We really have an option tonight for two different motions, and I'll read them both out to you and ultimately let our governing board decide on how to move forward. The first motion could simply be that the board is choosing to postpone the superintendent search as discussed and described this evening. Another motion could simply be as well to follow the timeline as discussed and push us forward into that superintendency search process. So I stand here for any questions or commentary, and certainly would leave it open up to our board to make those motions and move us forward.
Thank you, Dr. Davidson, for that clarity. I'll proceed with, I move to postpone the superintendent search.
I'll second that.
And we'll have a discussion. Ms. Stone?
Well, I believe this is the right decision for now. I believe that we have some good stability in our community and in our school district. I think that Ms. Pallas Thompson has done a really good job in taken things from being in a lot of upheaval to more steadiness. I believe that we have a lot on our plate now to try to bring somebody new in, and Ms. Pallas Thompson has agreed that she would stay to give us a little breathing space and time to find a new superintendent. So I appreciate that very much, and I also I believe that for our community and for our district, this would be the right decision at this time.
Mr. Sandoval?
Yeah, so, for me, it's, and I've always said, and I think we all agree, that this is a decision that is mission critical, to the district, one that the magnitude level is very high, so we need to make sure that we select, the right individual for this seat. That's how, when I look at the timeline, it feels compressed a little bit, a little accelerated, and I don't. Again, this is a decision that we need to be very thoughtful about, and make sure that. We take our time in doing so. I will agree with Ms. Stone. I mean, with the bond not passing on Tuesday, and now how, we move forward collectively, shift priorities, going into, just the 2019 and the 2019-20 academic year. There are a lot of very important decisions that will need to be made. That's very important. The important to fill the seat is very important, and trying to focus and juggle both. I would hate for any one of those subjects to have any aspect of it fall through the cracks. So I'm definitely in agreement that this is something that we need to be thoughtful about, and by postponing it, I think it puts us in the district in a position to be successful.
Ms. Pingerelli?
Well, I agree with the comments from my previous two board members. At this point, with the past election of a couple days ago, I believe that this is the correct decision to make, to go a little bit slower. Things are stable. Hopefully, in another year, the strategic plan will be fully implemented. I agree with my two board members to postpone it at this time.
Ms. Connect?
I'm fine with that, with everything that's been said, but I will ask a question since you brought it up. I think it's relevant. Have we are utilizing the strategic plan and building on the strategic plan, but refresh my memory, have we formally adopted the strategic plan?
We have not.
I didn't think so. Okay. I hope we can do that. So.
Okay. The only other comment that I will add is, as board president, I have the role to speak to McPherson and Jacobson in lieu of the recent situation and the decisions as a district that we will have to decide on. He gave me permission to go ahead and quote him that it is relevant to delay the search in the situation where we have some financial decisions that we need to resolve or address, so that going forward, setting up the new superintendent for success. So at this point, it seems all governing board members have made their statements, and we'll proceed with a vote. Motion passes 5-0 to delay the search.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Moving on to 8.2, improving English proficiency of English language learners. Miss Anita Gomez, welcome back.
Hi, thanks. Good evening, President Ceja Martinez, governing board members, and Mrs. Pals Thompson. I'm here tonight, Anita Gomez, representing our Federal Programs Department. I'm the director, and I have with me tonight Ann Bamina, who is our EL coordinator, who's has a lot of work to do and a lot of work involved here tonight, but she's happy about that. So I'm here tonight to talk about the achievement gap with our English learners and what our district is doing to close that gap. Do I have the power of click, don't I? There it is. Okay, so it is a part of our district's strategic plan to work on student achievement, and the ultimate goal of our EL program is to raise the level of the language acquisition skills of our EL students so that beyond graduation they can do whatever they want, that they have enough proficiency in the English language to work where they want to work, go to school where they want to go, join any kind of workforce, trade school, college, and that's our focus. We follow I'm not clicking right, am I? What if I do this? Oh, there we go. We follow the advice and the guidance from the Arizona Department of Education, which is to work first on the language acquisition and know that from there is where our achievement follows. But that must be the first priority. Language must come first. This is right off their webpage. So let's talk about some background first. I took lots of notes because I don't want to leave anything out. So AZELA is the test that measures the language acquisition here in Arizona. It stands for the Arizona English Language Learner Assessment. All students that are new to Arizona or new to the school system, our kindergarten students, for example, that come in and enter the system, take a placement test if they have any other language at home or have spoken any other language than English, and their language skills are assessed. Excuse me. The information that we get from those scores are important because we know that the acquisition of English is vital. We need to rise it enough for that student so that they can score well on complex tests like AZ Merit. When they're reading those advanced texts, they need to be able to have enough knowledge to do that. And so this year is an unusual year. 2018 reassessment tests were below the state average. We have at least met that average in the past, so this year was unusual, and I'll speak a little bit more to that. Our students also, our EL students, are scoring below the district average on AZ Merit. And I've said a little bit about how language has to come first. And when you have a test like the AZ Merit, which is very rigorous, and it's in a language that you don't speak, those scores, when we look at growth scores and proficiency scores, what are they measuring? And with EL students, it's not their ability in math, per se. It's really their ability to understand and read the question. So when we look at growth, is it growth because it's been another year that they've practiced English, or is it because they've had more math? And that's hard to tell in a test like this. So until they have that proficiency that we're looking for on the Azella test, really the AZ Merit scores are secondary. We really need to focus on growth on the Azella test. Our EL students are below district average for high school graduation as well, and that's something I think my department has addressed this past semester, and we're making changes for second semester with some additional information that we learned from ADE about the 4-hour block and how we're able to adjust that from the 3 required SCI blocks to cover 4 hours a day to 2. So we're going to be changing schedules over the break and get students better on track starting January for an on-time graduation. Right now, as it stands, our EL students in high school cannot finish in 4 years. That is why we have some parents that are withdrawing their students from services, so they're not in SCI classes, and they're not getting that support. And we need to find a way, and I think we have it, that we're reacting and getting the needs addressed so that the students who need the support have it until they pass the Azella and show that they're proficient and that they graduate on time. They don't want to have to go to summer school. No one wants to have to go to summer school or graduate a year late when all your friends have already gone. And that really, there's ways that we have figured out how to make that work and graduate on time. So it's exciting for us, and we have a lot of things to work on with our high school counselors and things like that. So that's exciting. I'm going to show you some more details about the Azella, though. This past spring was a disappointment. So why? What happened? And last year, I was the district test coordinator, and I was involved in giving the Azella test to our 1,200 students last year, and I got to see firsthand a lot of inconsistencies throughout the district with preparedness for the test, and that was as simple as students, some had practiced and some had not. We practice and prepare students for the AZ Merit. We should help students consistently, all of our EL students practice that test, and it's available online, and it's an awkward test, and we did a good job this year making teachers take it and try it. And I always start off with the story of there's the verbal part, and I've only spoken English, and I'm 54 years old, and I'm doing the test, and I'm stuttering, and it's like you're nervous because it's an unusual test. It's not a difficult test, but it's in a strange format that they're assessing with the speaking part and reading and repeating sentences, and that's not something especially school kids do. Repeat after me and repeat your teacher and repeat what I said and make sure the endings are still there and that the S's are clear and things like that, which are things that our teachers are learning that they need to remediate and support and even make fun games out of and make it a joke. But all the way up through high school, having those opportunities to do those small skills like that. So we needed really to look how we're going to get that rehearsal going, and we're calling it boot camp. We're launching our entire team of 16 instructional specialists that are EL specialists, and we are going to every single school in the district to make sure that this year our 1,301, I think, students practice the Azella so that when they take the test, it is the most accurate representation of their language acquisition as possible. We want that test score to mean something. We want to know that if it says intermediate and it's 3 points away from proficient, that, okay, we still had a way to go. It wasn't because they were blindsided when we showed up that day to give the test. There's a 6-week window starting in February, lasts until spring break, and we get to everybody My assessment team of 4 people will test all 1,300 students in that time. And the test takes about 3.5 to 4 hours per student, has 5 parts. Listening is part of it, answering questions aloud is part of it, and then describing things, a lot of vocabulary, grammar, so all these things are addressed throughout the year.
Before we proceed to the next slide, I do have a couple questions.
I went back, yes.
So you have whole data, but what I am looking for are the subgroups, because we have ILLP students versus classroom, and what are their growth, their stats in those particular areas? Do we see a difference between those that are on ILLPs versus students that are in whole group? The 4-hour model, what's the impact from school site to school site? Where do we get an opportunity to look at that data?
I don't have the chart for that, but I can tell you in general that there doesn't seem to be a difference. And I have another slide that I'll talk to, that I can mention. I can bring it up right now. We have 5 kindergarten classes, and then our next big section of SEI or self-contained class is 1-2 classes. They're first and second mixed, right? We have 7 of those in the district, and then 3 third, fourth grade combined classes, 1, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 5, 6. So the majority of our students are serviced with ILLPs and supported with an instructional assistant.
I would like to see their scores in the future compared to either a report emailed to us, because essentially we need to grow our students. At least we have a base to start. This is the first time we've seen a decline. I'm quite familiar. I used to give the Azella and teach most of my years. But there was a big difference in whole group where you had enough students in a classroom versus ILLPs and also school demographics. So our students at Santa Fe, those students that are second language learners, are they in the immersion program or are they in the state mandated 4-hour model? We need to find, not one model is going to fit all, but we need to find the model based on best practices.
I agree. What I used recently is this report here. What we love about it is it's recent, it's new, it's fresh data. It talks about the 2-year monitoring after students become proficient. You can't just set them free. Okay, we're done, you're good. No, keep making sure monitoring they're great. We have to make sure that the Azella test is really assessing the proficiency and not something else like a reading disability. We need to make sure that our teachers are properly trained and that they have a higher set of expectations because the demands on what it is they need to do in the classroom are higher and very important. So these are the things we're trying to, well, we definitely are working towards. We're on that. We are certainly not near the destination, but we're on our way. We took the right exit off the freeway to get there. So I know that we're heading in the right direction. What's interesting about Santa Fe that you mentioned it, we're looking at next year because we have the Spanish immersion program there. It's great. And it just seemed like a lost opportunity that we have a large group of students that are pre-emergent and have an expertise in Spanish language. Not all of our ELs speak Spanish. We serve almost 36 different languages throughout the district, but there's a high population of Spanish speakers there. And they don't get the opportunity to be in the role where they're the experts in the classroom. So in their mixed model classroom where they're learning English and their peers around them are learning English, they haven't had that opportunity for the shoe to be on the other foot where they can be the expert. I'm going to help you learn Spanish because you helped me learn English. And we're working on that for next year. Mr. Nitschke and I have talked about that and I've already asked permission with AD. They've pre-approved the model where we can get them in for that block for 2 hours a day and still be compliant with everything we need to do. But what I thought, well, how great for those students to have that good feeling knowing that there can be a bigger part of the community in the classroom, but understand I'm learning English, but I can understand you learning Spanish and we can help each other.
That's great.
It takes the edge off.
Can I just say hallelujah? Since we adopted our Spanish immersion program, I've advocated for allowing Spanish-speaking students to be in there. It's a real organic way for students to learn language, talking to each other, learning from each other. And I think the benefit to our Spanish-speaking students, learning from the English-speaking kids and vice versa is invaluable. It's invaluable, and it's natural. I love that. Could while I have the mic, so the 4-hour model is technically still the law, but they have changed it so that we can adapt it to our students' specific needs, or can you elaborate on that?
Yes, I was with a team of teachers and Babina, EL coordinator, and several others to learn some updated information from ADE, and they talked about what counts as a teaching segment, and they talked about the 4-hour model and how if you have departmentalized classes, like in a junior high, and it's a 45-minute or 52-minute class, that would still count as the segment, as 4 segments. So we were looking at each other, and it's like 45 minutes, so the hands go, 45 minutes, because 45 plus 45 is 90, and that's the blocks we have at high school. So it's like, okay, so 45 and 45, that's a block, and another 45 and 45 over here, that's 2 blocks, that's 2 instead of 3. Will that work? Are we allowed to do that? And the AD instructor was very nice and said, let's talk during the break. Okay, so we did. We were very excited, and she confirmed, and it's nowhere in writing, and we're not going to find it in writing or on any website, but she confirmed to us that it would be appropriate to have 2 blocks instead of 3 to count as the 4 hours in a high school or a departmentalized middle school section, like junior high classes as low as even 5th grade. So this changes the model for high school, and it's a relief, because this is going to open up a lot of things for our SEI students currently at our 4 big schools that have SEI students. So
you may not know my background. When I taught, I was an ESL teacher for at least a little while. And so I'm very interested in this topic. And I'm a little perplexed because the 4-hour model adopts the philosophy that you talked about, that language comes first, that you have to learn the language before you can go into a math class or whatever. But the language immersion program that we do at Santa Fe is the opposite, where we have the students surrounded by the content, and they learn the language as they go along. My opinion is that is a richer way to do that. So what does the experts say about language acquisition and about the success of the language first model that ADE mandates for us?
Research is different than what we're finding in the research is a little different than the model, which assumes that we do 4 hours every day. Within a year, the students will be proficient in English language, and that just doesn't happen. Research shows it's more like 5 to 7 for a proficiency that will rise to that higher vocabulary that we find on state assessments.
And the flaw in that is if you spend 4 hours a day doing nothing but language, then you're not doing science and you're not doing social studies and those kinds of things. There's only so many hours in a day.
There is.
So I really have a lot of respect for the educational experts within our organization, and I would just encourage you and them to ask those important questions to ADE, because I think everything we do should be based in good learning strategy and philosophy. And so then my last question is about our teachers in the classroom. Do we have teachers who are teaching English language learners who specialize in that kind of instruction? And do we have enough of them?
Most of our teachers have an SEI endorsement because it was required at the time. I do. Everyone I have worked with in the SEI program does here in our district. Really the key point, and I'm going to mention this later in the presentation, I'll be quick about it, is just keeping up with good materials, having a strong curriculum, knowing what they need to do in the ILLP and how they support that, but it's not just me, the one teacher, and that's something we're trying to get across. If there's a student in my room at ILLP, I'm the English teacher, I'm not the only one who deals with that. It's everybody who sees that student during the day, which can be 6, 7 people.
Including his or her classmates.
Yes. And so these are things, it's a bit of a paradigm shift, and I think we're noticing in our travels, and we're going from school to school, and sometimes teachers one-on-one, we call it the road show, when we talk about how to better address ILLPs and raise the rigor and the scores of our EL students. We talk about all these important parts, but we have lots of support, and it's new. It seems that we have lots of ready and able teachers who will say to us, tell me what to do and I'll do it. So it's bringing that awareness to the front and just beating our drum throughout the district and keeping on it. So it's not just a one and done deal where we're going to mention this once, you heard me, now you know what to do. We keep swinging back around, come back, we check, we provide feedback, we visit classrooms and really get a firsthand look at where we need to start moving our resources, like for our pre-emergent students, and looking at how we use things like Rosetta Stone and visual aids and things like that. Try to get the resources where they need to be in a consistent manner throughout the district. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you for that, and I realize there's probably a Q&A slide to your presentation, but I'm going to go ahead and jump in here. I agree with what's been said thus far. I think the peer-to-peer impact, makes a huge difference without question, and I agree with what Ms. Saya Martinez stated around. I mean, every site has its own story, and every one of our students is different. So the ability to leverage tactics that are aligned with those differences, we need to understand those. My question is more in and around the parent involvement in the process, right? So not just parents, but parents, guardians, potentially some of these students, are homeless students, which is yet another, variable that we need to consider. How are those guardians, parents, family members engaged in the process? And here's the reason for my question. At the beginning, you mentioned there was a couple parents or some parents who have pulled their child out of the program because they weren't seeing movement, right? But I think if we have some collaboration, with the parents and or guardians, if there's buy-in to understanding, the process, what we're doing, and it even helps us, understand, some of these uniquenesses, if you will, of our student. I think it'll put that student, our Yale students, in a path of success, while realizing buy-in and understanding, from their parents and or guardians. So my question is around how are they involved? Are they involved?
Depends on the site. Every year at the start of the year, a letter goes home. It's a parent notification, and the parent signs that. So they're getting that in writing. But there's not a lot outside of one-on-one, which is fantastic, though, one-on-one conferences with teachers, with the parent. We're looking at how we're going to do a better job from my department to get information out, because it's one thing to post it on a website, but it's nice to have it in different languages out there, even short videos, and have small meetings, not big, huge ones, but more centralized, maybe in clusters, to get information out. There's a lot of misinformation out, and one of the things that you mentioned, parents, we're going to be making some phone calls with our high school students that are parent withdraw, that are in English classes, who are getting D's and F's, because there's a missed opportunity there. So that deserves a second conversation, and I'll be working with the principals about what that should sound like and what we can do for those students, because we need them back. We need them back with support that they need so they can get through and grow, because they're not, the teachers know who their EL students are, even if they're not in an SEI class. So if they're parent withdraw, they're aware that they have an English need, and that they can do what they can in the class to address that. So there's nothing wrong with that, but it'd be nice to have students that clearly are demonstrating a deficit, that we have them back on board. And that's something we'll work on for the even before the second semester, finishing up this first semester, so that their schedules can be fixed for second semester. But there is definitely a need for that part. It's scattered, it's inconsistent throughout the district, and it's something my department will work on.
Good. Well, it's certainly pleased to know that you're considering that.
I'm going to speed up now. So what we've been working on is a revised curriculum and changing the instructional model, and I've talked a bit about that. So I'm going to give you some statistics real quick. 1,302 EL students in our district, and what's nice is you see that the average per grade level goes down as the students get older. So by the time they're in high school, we have a 50 grade level average, which means that the programs that we are doing are working. We're getting kids to be proficient. Not as much this year as in years past, and not as, certainly we're definitely gaining momentum and looking at all aspects of the test so that we can correct that this spring. In fact, we have 31 high school students taking mid-year Azella. They're allowed to do that. We have permission from ADE for our 31 high school students that were so close. We're confident that they will pass the Azella and be finished with SEI classes for second semester and start their 2-year monitoring after that.
I do have a statement on this one. What concerns me about that number is we use the float form to identify English language learners. As you identify, some of the parents pull their kids out of the program, so this number is not accurate because it just means that the students that stay identified.
This number includes the 102 students. There's 102,
that
104 that are parent withdraw, and most of those, I have a statistic for you.
And then some parents choose not to identify at all. So they could be
I see what you're saying.
ESL
it is
students,
certainly
but
possible.
Parents have not identified.
I would say that's
happens. Recognizing state law is to, if a parent fulfills the form out, then we meet those needs aligned to those 4-hour model or however system curriculum we want to follow. But there are students in our district that are not identified, and we owe it to them to meet their needs, whether there's a form or no form. And going forward, as you continue to look at that program and the system and curriculum we develop, we keep an eye on those students that did not fill out that form.
There is a teacher referral process that addresses exactly that. We've had students that have come from other districts in the state, and on that float form, it'll say all English, but they have an Azella history, and we determine that when we scan through all of the SSIDs. So we've had those conversations. We had 42 students like that last year that entered our district, but had an Azella history. So we made sure that we address that with every parent.
Thank you.
So you mentioned earlier, Mrs. Ceja Martinez, about SEI program and ILLPs. Those are the two types of programs the state encourages us to follow. And when we do that, the state's, it's interesting. If you have 20 students in a 3-grade level band, you must have an SEI class. And that's why we have the 1-2 mixes, the 3-4 mixes, because we will have just enough over a larger band.
Have we considered looking at, instead of just doing grades 1, 2, you do it by proficiency level?
We have, and we would like to do that because the test itself, there's unique qualities about the test in the different grade levels. Like the K2 test is on paper, and then 312 is computerized, so we'd rather have a 3-4 class because those, that test is identical, just higher cut scores. And have a 1-2 instead of a 1-2-3 or a 2-3. So we're trying to be cognizant as to where the levels are of the students and addressing those in the ILLP and the planning for the teachers, but it's been tough. It's hard. You know that. It's just, and it's frustrating when talking with teachers and they want to make it work and they need more, and one teacher at a time. And we're doing more to make our information and help accessible. So it doesn't mean that you had to go to that conference. We took 24 this year. We're going to take them again, but we're trying to get our information out. We have a newsletter that goes out monthly, and it has ready-to-use information. We're constantly pulling kits and sending those to teachers, and working on our next big thing is little short videos, not a 90-minute webinar, but little short things where they can start to work on their skill set and reach that level where the language part is just embedded in everything they do, which is good for everybody.
Thank you.
So we tested nearly 400 students this year started the school year, and 185 of those were kindergartners. So that's why when you're looking at this list of the solution things that we are looking at and using to build the skill set of our staff and help our students close that gap and really acquire English as soon as they can, are these things here. And there's just so much. The more we do, the more we discover, the more we reach out to other districts, the more we realize there's things that we haven't yet used to our advantage. And other districts are very proud to share their work. So we're using a lot of different things. But again, it's a process. We've started it. And I'm really proud of how far we've gotten this year. And I think that our EL program is something that will be my favorite thing, my best accomplishment, because I really see a turn for the better for a lot of the things that we're doing now are going to just benefit the student and turn around our graduation rates. And for many kids, change their feelings about school and knowing they can graduate on time, and knowing at Santa Fe I can go into that class and I'm the one who knows everything about how the language works. I think there's lots of things that we're going to be acting on that'll just make it better next year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
We'll start off with Mr. Sandoval.
So the only other comment I have, and really it pleases me to hear that you do speak to other districts to understand best practices. You know, for instance, I know Phoenix Union has thousands of languages spoken, you know, amongst their student population. So it's always smart and a best practice to realize diverse thought, you know, from other districts that may have, you know, similar situations, and allows us to think a little differently and certainly understand what we may not know. So thank you for, you know, your willingness to partner and have those conversations, you know, with other, you know, districts throughout the valley.
Ms. Doan?
I do have a few things. So how well do you say this? Would you say that the students are engaged? How interested are they in the English learning process?
What I see in classrooms and what my department has seen is active engagement that you would expect in any classroom. I think there's a frustration level as the students get older, especially when in high school we have a handful of students that are fresh, new from other countries and don't speak the language. It's hard enough when you move when you're a freshman in high school, let alone move to a place where no one speaks anything you can understand. So there are cases where teachers have sought help from a counselor and even other students to try to encourage the interest and the attempts. And there's other students you'll see they will never give up and continue to try and try. So just like with any test, the AZELA is just in many ways like the ASMERIT in that sense, where you're always hoping for the best assessment of what the student knows, but some of the students don't care about the test or find it annoying and don't bother to try. And that's when our scores get skewed, and you really have to individualize with the student and encourage them, break down the test into smaller segments, maybe have the test one-on-one, just trying to get an accurate read. But I understand why you're asking that question, because it is. Being motivated to learn is half the battle, regardless of the subject. So those are challenges that our teachers face, for sure.
Do you think that it would be possible the students would be more engaged if there were other subjects involved, such as if the reading was science or history or something like that? You think there's a possibility of melding that in, like we were speaking about, with so that they can actually learn some of the curriculum while they're doing their English?
Yes. Grammar Gallery, am I right, Rand?
Well, that's...
Is it Grammar Gallery? Grammar Gallery, the reading portions are all science and social studies related.
Okay.
So there's a lot of effort put into a lot of the good SEI materials to bring those subjects forward into the reading practice to expose them to those topics.
Do you find more interest there in those areas? I mean, all right, if I was a student, I would be so frustrated if I couldn't understand what was going on, if I knew I was falling farther and farther behind my peers because I couldn't understand the language. So I know we have some people in these classes that are very smart and very interested in learning. So would you say that that's probably a tool that engages them more, knowing that they can kind of keep up in those areas?
I would say yes, and I think that's part of the motivation for us to move to a mixed classroom model next year for our K-8 schools, is that in fact exactly what you just said, and that because there are those subjects that art, band, those are things as well as science and social studies that spark a desire and interest to be in school.
I do. Now you said you sent out a letter at the beginning of the year and it was returned. Can the students be placed in these classes without parental permission, or is it a parental permission only?
When the student first enters the district, there is a form that goes home about the test, right? It is not required to have the parent's signature or permission.
Okay.
If a parent is against it, the principals have a conversation about what would be provided to the student, what an ILLP is, if that's appropriate, SCI, or so forth. And there's some, for whatever reason, they might feel that a bad experience in another school district is something I've heard often. Well, they don't, especially in high school, they don't want their student to miss out on many electives or other things that they want to take, like science, social studies, dance, arts. And so those are individual conversations when a parent will express interest in not having their student participate.
All right, and I think it's it would be so much easier, I think, for some of our students, and Mr. Sandoval was talking about, family engagement especially. Are we looking at ways to increase the family engagement?
Yes, and there's lots of different ways. I'm also in charge of 21st Century Grants, and those grants go up again in the spring, and I'll be recruiting schools to take that on. It provides a tremendous amount of money and focuses on student before and after school engagement as well as parent engagement every week. We're looking at expanding what we already have planned for parent engagement using Title I monies this year, and that is something that we have lots of work to do there because there's lots of things that can be done that we have not. So there's lots of great ideas for the future as we work past into the spring, gearing up for next year. We want to start off next year strong by getting out information early and getting people together.
Does any of that include English for the parents, for the grandparents, or whoever?
Yes, we currently have a program for that purpose. She has 2 separate classes. In fact, Edith showed me some homework that her group did and how well they did. She was really proud of that, and we're looking to expand that as well next year.
And with students that have their parents in those classes and how well they do?
Yes, we see an increased homework being completed at home, also reaching out, and the comfort level of reaching out to the teachers and even into the front office, and attendance is better as well.
That's excellent. They probably practice on each other at home. Yeah. That's really good. What was that? Oh, I think that's all I had. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
No questions. I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Ms. Connect? I have a question. Okay. Yeah. The only thing I would like to add that is not provided, and you did touch base on Title I funds. Do we have specific funding for our ESL student or SCI students?
Yes. In Title III?
In Title III. So I know the board has asked for more information on Title I funding. Yes. In the future, I would like to have that conversation with Title III funding. When we look at our programs, how are we allocating those resources to our students? And if the program is not working, then we move forward with something else. But the funding and then how schools get those funds based on student enrollment, number of kids, ILPs. But that was, that's the last of the information I would like to review.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I just jump in for a second?
Please.
And we've talked about, as we define the problem in this area, what we're hearing this department working on is there is a gap for our learners, and some of the major issues that that they're addressing and working on as a team right now is number one, looking at how do we revise the curriculum. There has been a very lightweight curriculum, if any, in that area. You can see some of the areas that they're looking at right now. Professional development has been almost non-existent.
Wow.
With respect to our teachers who are working with that, with Ms. Bambina in that group, in the team. They're getting professional development. That's part of the Monday program specifically for teachers on how to work with students. Resources, as far as resources, definitely and aligned. I had the opportunity last week to meet with a first-year ELL teacher at the high school who came up with specifically what I'm hearing, the board talk about are how do we, instead of taking English and getting an English elective credit and then an English credit, and that's what they get all year long. So they're not getting the other subjects. Teachers going in and saying, well, why aren't we doing English and then a social studies, or English and a math credit in English for our students? So to bring up the rigor and doing that, we're also working with some of our different departments in Ingenuity and saying, what other things could they be doing at home to get our graduation rates moving? So very strong focus. And the parent component is absolutely an area that they're going to continue to work on. So excited about it. I think the first thing, though, is again, defining the problem. And the problem, that gap is not acceptable. And we're going to take care of it. So thank you.
Thank you all, everybody, for presenting, and Ms. Bavina. She was my teacher. I know she's phenomenal. So, going forward, 8.3, first readings of our policies.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Thompson. We're here with you again tonight. Policy Section J. We have 7 items for you this evening. First read. So we'll just jump in.
All right, here we go.
All right, I'll follow your lead.
Okay, first reading, Arizona School Board Association Policy Advisory Revision to current policy JFAA, admission of resident students.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. This was statutory language from the Arizona State Legislature to clarify that when a student whose parent is transferred or is pending a transfer to a military installation within this state while on active military duty, pursuant to official military orders, may enroll their student in the district. So in a situation where a family may be engaged in that relocation, mom can enroll the students even though they may not be officially here yet until those orders are posted and dad joins them and he starts his military service. So it's really just adding the idea that they have 10 days after officially enrolling to provide that residency information.
Perfect. Any discussion? Moving on, 8.4, first reading, Arizona School Boards Association Policy Advisory Revision to current policy JFAB, tuition admission of non-resident students.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, this was a paragraph that was added, again, about students who are United States residents but non-residents of our state. And basically what has happened is we moved it within the policy section and it becomes a discretionary power, not mandatory. And basically what it talks about is if we have a child that's enrolled in a year-round residential boarding academy in our state, we may enroll them in our schools without charging tuition. And so they may be staying somewhere and participating in that. It's interesting, I'm aware of a lot of students who leave our state and go to other schools around the country to play hockey, is one example, in a climate where that's more likely to happen. But if we had a gymnastics academy within our district and we had a student that was here, we would typically enroll them and we would not charge tuition.
Any questions, comments? None noted. Moving on. 8.5, first reading. Arizona School Board Association Policy Advisory Revision to current policy JFABB, admission of exchange and foreign students.
Okay, Madam President, this was interesting, and we did research this, our group. The language that they've added really aligns itself to Arizona Revised Statute 15823, which specifically talks about the admission of foreign exchange students. So there's two subsections. There's the subsection D and a subsection E. And E is what adds this the concept that we may accept foreign exchange students within our district at the same number of our students who participate in foreign exchange in a foreign country. You can see where it's crossed out. And what's crossed out is acceptable, so it is something for the board to consider. I believe you have the leeway to go either way. What our typical practice has been is that we do accept foreign exchange students, typically at a high school of about 1 to 250. And it's not uncommon for our high schools to accept students on a J1 visa, up sometimes to a half a dozen across our district. So we could keep the language the same it is, or we could move in the new direction because both subsections address it equally. That would be at the pleasure of the board. But the recommendation from ASBA is what you see here.
The recommendation from our administration.
Member Connect, I have not polled our high school principals on that. I will tell you that my experience has been they're very open to accepting foreign exchange students. They do get concerned if we get to 5 or 6 at one high school. That's a large number to integrate into all of the activities and things that we do to help support our foreign exchange students. So what we try to do is spread it across the district. At 1 to 250, so at a typical high school, that would be, what, 4 per 1,000? So it could be as high as 8. I do not recollect any time that we had 8 foreign exchange students on one campus. I think the most has probably been 4, primarily because that's the number of children that come too. I mean, it's not like we have 20.
I would heed whatever the high school principals think is in the best interest of both the foreign exchange students and their student body. I mean, it is clearly a benefit to engage students from other countries and other cultures, but they would know what the best number is. I certainly would allow them to make that decision.
Right.
Which one is better?
So, and this is just a policy to give us that flexibility, and the administrators can execute it how they see what's in the best interest of the student, correct?
Madam President, members of the board, the direction that we would need from the board at the second read is either to accept this policy as presented this evening or to revert back to what our original policy is, which is the crossed out line, which gives us the flexibility to determine, as opposed to saying, okay, we have 2 students that went overseas, that means we can only accept 2 in. So there'd be a limitation that way.
Okay.
And I believe, in my experiences, there's less of our students going overseas typically. We do have a number of students who do engage in the foreign exchange program overseas, leaving our country and going to other countries around the world. But typically it's been more students coming this way.
So do I hear you saying that you think the old policy was just fine? It ain't broke?
If it ain't broke, I would agree with that, members of the board, if you're asking me that question.
Okay.
This is first read. Ms. Pingrelli?
For high school students, Mr. Scoy, I guess how do we place them? Is it in near the school where they have the family that they're staying with? Or is it, and do we consider placing them in, if they're in an overcrowded school, do we shift them to another school, or is it just a location?
Mrs. Pangarelli, members of the board, that's a great question, and it does come up from time to time. Typically, we do everything we can to support the family. Typically, the family wants to host the student. Mm-hmm. We work to send them to that local high school. 99.9% of the time that happens, But I will tell you that we have had situations where there were already too many foreign exchange students at a high school, so we recommended another placement, which put some burden on the family that's hosting the student. We've also had, from time to time, students from placement agencies that are not within our district, and we have not been able to accommodate because we had our own number of students. So we do look at the enrollment, and if it is, a crowded school, that we certainly don't want to recommend in that situation. So that has come up in the past, and we've had to readjust that.
Board members, it sounds to me like our administration has a good handle on managing this, and so it would be my recommendation not to adopt the new language and to stick with the former verbiage, and allow our principals and our administrators to manage the inflow of foreign exchange students.
So, and this is first read.
First read, but at the direction of the board, I could show it in the second read with the older language, if the board is directing me to do that tonight. If you're saying maybe submit it the other way. Okay. All right.
Okay. Moving on to 8.6, first reading, Arizona School Board Association Policy Advisory Revision to current policy JFABC, admission of transfer students, academic credit transfer.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, House Bill 2389 added statutory language in the revised statute, Title I, Section 701, that establishes that school districts may evaluate the transcripts of transfer students for the assignment of credit. And so basically what this policy is saying is that as students transfer into our school system, we need to evaluate the courses that they're bringing and determine the alignment with our coursework. Because some high schools may have different course names. Is the content of that course equal to what we're requiring? And then it also addresses the online coursework. And so if we can make that alignment, we do. It can be awarded the core credit. It could be awarded the elective credit. And then certainly the student transferring in, if the alignment is not there, they can take the competency tests to get credit for that class. So that really just states that in the credit for graduation requirements.
Any questions or comments?
I like it.
Okay. 8.7, first reading, Arizona School Board Association's Policy Advisory Revision to current policy JFABD, admission of homeless students.
Madam President, members of the board, this is a very simple change, really just one sentence. But this policy having to do with students in foster care. Enrollment preference may be given to children who are in foster care is omitted from this policy because the next policy you see will address foster care children. So the section on the admission of homeless students, which we spend a good deal of time with, the idea of they're removing that from this section and creating the new section.
Any questions? Okay, moving on. Thank you so much. 8.8, first reading of Arizona School Board Association Policy Advisory Revision to current policy JFABDA, admission of students in foster care.
Madam President, members of the board, this is a new policy section as recommended by ASBA and following statutory guidance as well. And this whole section ensures that children that are in foster care are provided an opportunity to be educated, whether it be in our system or if their foster placement is at a home within our district, they still have the right to go to their school of origin as well. Those are some of the key provisions. But if the board had any question as you review this between now and the second read, please let me know. But I think it's a pretty comprehensive policy for children in the foster care system.
Any
for their
questions?
Protection.
Ms. Connect?
Could you just address, out of my curiosity, there was stuff in there about transportation, but what is the district's responsibility if a student decides that he or she wants to attend the school of origin?
Mrs. Connect, members of the board, we provide transportation for that student.
So if a foster student is now living within our district, but they want to go to the school of origin, we provide the transportation, right?
That is correct.
And that's the same with homeless students, too.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
8.10, as we tabled 8.9, so moving on to first reading of Arizona School Boards Association Policy Advisory Revision to current policy JICI, weapons in school.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, members of the board. The description of a knife is really the main change here, and one other piece as well, too. But weapons means any of the following. They deleted the definition of knife. So if you have a knife, it's a weapon. And so it's included in the list of weapons. Also, House Bill 2338 amended the revised statutes Title 13, which is the criminal code, by adding the following subsection about educational institutions may not adopt or enforce any policy or rule that prohibits the lawful possession or carrying of a deadly weapon on a public right-of-way. And then the next part of this policy defines what a public right-of-way is. And that means any highway, street, road, thoroughfare, path, alley, or other right-of-way that is publicly accessible and is established and maintained by the state. Public right-of-way does not include property of an educational institution. So really just a couple of updates. One, they've taken the definition of knife away and just a knife as a weapon. And then the last two sections in the policy has to do with not making any rule that would prevent the lawful possession of a weapon. So we researched this. We were trying to figure out what was the meaning of this, and I believe where we landed with our committee was that in 1990, the Gun-Free School Zone Act was passed by Congress, which said that within 1,000, I think it's 1,000 feet, around a school is a safe school zone. And so I think what happened was the Arizona legislature enacted a legislation that said the board certainly can make any rule they want about weapons being on a campus, and our rules say no weapons on campus. Our policy says that. But I think it was to protect the lawful possession of a weapon of somebody that was in the neighborhood or walking down the sidewalk by the school, that they wouldn't be in violation. And also, I mean, that's pretty much it in essence. So it allows the board to make rules to prohibit weapons in any of our roadways on our school property and certainly within the school building.
Mr. Sandoval?
Thank you. Can you go back to the definition of a knife, please?
Sure.
There is no more definition of a knife.
Or the deleted definition of a knife? Thank you. So my question is this: where does a folding pocket knife with a blade length of not more than 2.5 inches that cannot be locked in an open position, where does that fall as far? Is it a destructive device? Is it a dangerous instrument? I'm trying to understand, because to me, a 2.5-inch blade is, still, kind of puts ourselves in a vulnerable position, or our students in a vulnerable position. So I'm just trying to understand where that's covered.
Mr. Sandoval, members of the board, that in essence is what it's now saying. Any kind of knife that a student would have in their possession at school could be classified as having a weapon on campus. Our principals, they're trained in, using best judgment. We're going to have a youngster probably in the 2nd or 3rd grade that might bring, a toy knife or a jackknife to school from being with his family on the weekend. The consequence of having a weapon on school is very, very serious, and in that instance, an administrator may use judgment to determine what's best for that youngster, and then maybe classify it as a contraband item as opposed to a weapon in school. Just giving you an example. But technically, this policy is saying that if you have a firearm, a knife, a destructive device, a dangerous instrument, simulated weapon, those are weapons.
Yeah, gotcha.
And so on our matrix, our discipline matrix, there's very serious consequences for having a weapon on campus.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I think it supports, I believe, what you're,
Yes.
It does. Yeah, okay.
So if I understand correctly, without changing this policy, children are allowed to bring a folding pocket knife.
No.
I mean,
Any knife.
it says other than,
If we don't change it.
If it's not changed, it says, other than a folding pocket knife with a blade length of not more than 2.5 inches that cannot be locked. In other words, not a switchblade.
You are correct.
Saying no qualifications.
No,
just
that's,
any knife.
I'm saying what it says before the change.
Right, before the change.
That's what I said.
Yeah, that's what
Before the change, if we don't enact this change, the folding pocket knife is allowed.
Right.
Members
According
of the
to
board,
policy.
you are correct. And so here's the interesting caveat here. Technically, if we have a student with a pocket knife with a blade length of not more than 2.5 inches, and you were to call the police to have that student arrested for having that, under the criminal code, the police, I don't believe they would arrest that student because it doesn't meet the definition for the criminal code. But in our school system, the policy recommendation from ASBA is we're not going to think about measuring it and can it stay, a knife is a knife.
And my question is, are we already enacting this as though the policy read the way we're, just a knife? Do we already stop our students from bringing pocket knives?
Mrs. Doan, members of the board, yes, absolutely. The expectation is that a student would not have that at school.
And can that be set by principals? If the policy reads the way it read, a principal can say, no, I'm not allowing any knives in my school, or is that just a district thing without it being in policy per se?
Right. Mrs. Doan, members of the board, I believe the practice historically has been with principals, if we did not change, if the policy was not changed, go back to the old original version, that principals would still not accept that on their campus. They wouldn't be able to call it a weapon, but they would certainly classify it as contraband or dangerous item, and there would be consequences for that student.
Right.
Now, again, we try to guide our folks if it's a 6 or 7-year-old student and the story sounds legitimate, that they were out catching bugs and, he had this in his backpack. I don't think it warrants a suspension off campus, but certainly a stern conversation, and mom and dad are involved, and that typically works. If it's a junior high student, the conversation obviously is a little bit different.
Right.
They're 13 or 14 years of age. But now, what this policy will say with the new verbiage is, if you have a knife, we can classify that as a weapon now if this policy change is put in effect by the board at the second read.
I was just curious as to how we were handling that, because I was quite sure we weren't allowing pocket knives.
We're not. We are not.
All right. So thank you for that explanation.
We're all good. Moving, that's it.
That's it.
Awesome.
One more board meeting.
Yes.
With policy. Okay, thank you very much.
Number 8.11, report and discussion on local, state, and federal legislative issues and activities. Ms. Linda Pellis-Thompson.
Well, thank you. Much of what we have you've already talked about, but let me go through a couple of them again. Election Day obviously is behind us, and yet we still have a lot of races still that are being determined as we go, because it takes us a little while due to mail-in ballots and the such. First of all, let me again thank and congratulate you, Mrs. Pangarelli. We're delighted to have you back for another 4 years, beginning January 1st, 2019, and you're still here. Mrs. Corey Underwood, congratulations, and you've sat through tonight, and hopefully this is sounding good to you, right? We're ready to come up, and we're delighted to have you. I also want to thank Dr. Gard, who I've had a chance to get to know, and thank him for his willingness to serve, as well as Davita Solter, colleague, friend, and thank you for your willingness always to be there, Davita, for all you do. When we started the board meeting tonight, you heard our bond initiative is in fact failing by, at this moment, 4,900 votes. So that's where we're at, which is, the good news is I think we were down, 40,000 or much more last year, or 2 years ago. So we're moving in the right direction if you want to keep a positive attitude. There's 4 other ballot measures that are also failing with respect to education from our colleagues across the Northwest, Natterburg School District, who I had the pleasure of presenting with in one of the meetings. They're failing currently, as is Mesa. It's a very, very small margin at this moment, though, so they're hopefully going to get close on their bond. State Superintendent for Public Instruction, Kathy Hoffman, currently is ahead by 22,000 votes. So that's a very, very tight 51% vote overage over Frank Riggs. Also impacting it is that Prop 305, which did fail, and that looks like that's sitting there with 66% no, 34% yes, and this will keep us from expanding across the state, the ASA. Maricopa County Educational Service Agency provides us with periodic updates like all night long if you're really in the mood. Watching them, and as we did on Tuesday and to the wee hours of Wednesday. So we will be getting unofficial results, and it does take about 2 weeks for the official to be called on certain elections. So we'll keep you posted. Interesting election times.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Moving forward to 9.1, Budget Facilities Planning Construction Report. It is available online for everybody to see. 9.10.2, request for future agenda items. Ms. Connect.
Thank you. I would very much, before I exit the board, be able to adopt formally the new strategic plan. I think that's a big accomplishment of this current administration and this board, so I'd like that. And also, thinking ahead to my colleagues that come in the next iteration of our board, I would like to review the policy and the process for selecting the board president and clerk. So I have 2 requests.
So we need a second, I'll second those. You second both at the same time?
Sure. Ms. Pingarelli? Mr. Sandoval?
So one of the things that I'd like to take a look at is our off-campus suspensions, meaning this. When we have a student that's suspended off-campus, is there some learning, education in the form of an attempt to change the behavior while they're not in school? So when they come back, they don't come back to campus. If they were suspended for, drugs or what have you, they don't come back with the same behavior, right? I think I just want to understand. What type of programs, learnings are students going through when they're suspended off campus? Are they on somewhat of a sabbatical and playing Fortnite and and the same behavior is taking place and they come back to school and nothing's changed? I think that's one of the things that we're responsible for.
So we don't want to discuss it.
Sorry.
We just want to put the item on the agenda.
Yeah, so I guess my ultimate outcome would be this. Off-campus suspensions and, what our students are charged with while they're suspended off campus. Are there programs? Are we supporting them?
Can we just have a report on that?
Yeah, I think a report's probably good, and then after that, we can determine whether or not we need a study session. Because I think for me, it goes beyond that to alternatives to suspension, trying to understand, where we can, keep our students are in school versus out of school. Okay.
Ms. Doan?
I don't have anything today, thank you.
Excellent. We are at the end, 11.1, adjournment at 7:50.
Second.
All right. Yep. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion passes 5-0. Meeting adjourned.